Hello and welcome back to another NihongoGamer video. It's been an interesting few weeks for me playing video games because I haven't only been playing fighting games unbelievably, and it's strange because I made a coffee video recently where I talked at length about how I'm not that into single player games at the moment. I understand that they're a very important genre, but I just felt like for some odd reason, I just found like the tasks in single player games just didn't feel like they needed to happen, and that I was just going through these motions like collect this item here, go over there, do this thing, slay this monster, come back over here. I didn't really feel like I understood why I had to go through all these things when I could be doing something that was actually developing some kind of mind skill or some physical skill or something that I could use over the long term. And I feel like every time I play a fighting game, I'm able to work on my motor skills or the mind games, or understand a little bit more about the data beneath the game that makes it work so that I can understand how to punish moves correctly. But actually, after making that video, I started trying to get back into some single player games. So notably, I had been streaming Monster Hunter. Actually, that was before I made that video. But I was also getting back into Final Fantasy VII, the remake. Right? I've been waiting 20 years for this game to come out, and for some reason, I just couldn't be bothered to actually play it. It's like, finally, we got Cloud in glorious HD, but why can't I bring myself to play this game? Strangely though, there was an RPG that I was interested in playing, and it was actually Atelier Ryza. Now, actually, the only reason I picked it up was because I had sold it the first time. And it turned out it was on sale on the Steam, no, I don't think it was the Steam summer sale, but there was part of a sale after the Steam summer sale, where Atelier Ryza was on sale, and I guess the reason is because Atelier Ryza 2 is coming out, so it makes sense to put Atelier Ryza 1 on sale, seeing as Atelier Ryza 2 is supposedly coming out on the 3rd of December, so that's a few months from now. So actually the main reason I sold Atelier Ryza the first time wasn't because I disliked the game. I actually streamed it a couple times on my Nintendo Switch. I think those streams were here on YouTube, and I had a ball. I spent the whole time talking about how relaxing the music was, how gorgeous the visuals were, how you could just sink into it like a bath and just enjoy it, rather than feeling like this hurried kind of task-based to-do list game where you just ran through the motions. I just felt like you could go into it and kind of enjoy it and experience it, a little bit like Animal Crossing. But after doing those streams, I really just felt like, for some reason, I didn't feel like I would have time to play it. I was like, I know that I want to play this game, but I'm too busy getting back into Street Fighter V. I was going to go to EVO Japan later on, or in the following year. So I was playing a bit more BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle and all that. And I was just continually getting into fighting games again. It's like this orbit. You're like continually flying away from the planet, but then the gravity like whips you back and brings you back into the orbit of fighting games. So anyway, the past few weeks have been kind of interesting because games that are like the Gundam game that I tried, that's not a fighting game, but it's kind of a fighting game. It has a lot of the same mechanics that you would find in a fighting game, but basically you're kind of in an arena. So it's somewhere between an arena fighter and a 2D fighting game or a 3D fighting game like Tekken. It has this like weird new genre somewhere in the middle. So I've enjoyed playing the Gundam game. Also, I've really enjoyed getting into games and celebrating games that are implementing rollback netcode, or should we just say good netcode, into their user experience, like Fighting EX Layer and Them's Fightin' Herds. But when I'm not streaming those games, and those are the 3 games I've been streaming the most recently, that's 2 fighting games and a game that's kind of like a fighting game. But after the stream is done, I like sometimes just sit in front of the TV, and when you're like relaxing with the TV and you're holding a pad and you're like, I don't want to play a fighting game right now, I just started going through my Steam library, because you can actually play Steam games on the TV, right? And one of the games that I got out was Atelier Ryza. Now, before that, I had been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I have to admit, I only played another session of it like once, and I was like, whew, that was quite an ordeal. But going through my Steam library through the Apple TV, so I had a controller synced up to my Apple TV, and it can just stream games from my laptop to my TV. I started really getting into playing Atelier Ryza in small bouts, and this is where I discovered something interesting about this game. So if you're not familiar with Atelier Ryza, or you weren't around for when I was streaming it on Nintendo Switch. The Atelier series is an RPG series that has been going for years and years. I think it's probably been around for a decade, or more than a decade. I think there's like over 20 or 25 Atelier series games. But what they are really are RPGs that are transfixed on that one quest. You know when you had to go to, I don't know, Billy the Wizard, and you had to bring him like 3 lumps of wood, a can of cheese, and I don't know, some sardines. And he was like, okay, I've made the magic Deku shield. Here you go. And the only way to make that magic shield was to bring it to Billy the Wizard. Imagine if that quest were every single item you needed to use in the game. So every single time you wanted to make a potion, or you wanted to make a grenade, or you wanted to make some other restorative item, or some sort of poison cure, or just the clothes that you're wearing, or the shields you're holding, or the swords that you're swiping with. Every single item has to go through this quest, where you ask Billy the Wizard to make it for you. But instead of going to Billy, you're the wizard. And this is basically the Atelier series. It's an RPG, but instead of focusing on every single thing that RPGs have focused on up until this point, for example, telling a story, or grinding through levels, leveling up your characters so that you can get to new dungeons, finding new items to pick up. The Atelier series was heavily focused on the item shop part. So basically, instead of going to item shops and buying all the things you need with money, they made that the game. You run around and you collect items so that you can make the items that you need to throw at the enemies to beat them. You're not collecting items so that you can move further in the RPG. It's like you're playing the RPG so that you can make more items. And in the first Atelier games that I picked up, which are the Ireland series, which ones, they were on like PlayStation 3. So it was like Atelier Rorona, one after that was Totori, and the one after that was like Meruru. The main goal is you're trying to be an alchemist. And so from day one, you're already going to the palace and you're being trained as an alchemist and you've got all these tasks. But with Ryza, they took a slightly different strategy. They're like, okay, well, how about we stop focusing so heavily on being an item creation tool, and we push it back to being a little bit more like Final Fantasy, a little bit more of a linear story-based RPG. But at the same time, clearly the main selling point that makes it different from those other RPGs is that it's still an Atelier game, or rather, it's like an alchemy game disguised as a linear style Final Fantasy RPG or Dragon Quest style RPG. The reason it was so interesting to me is that I didn't mind turning it back on. I would play a little bit of this RPG, I would collect an item, I would discover a new recipe, I'd create this new thing, and then I would go off on that boat and I would further the story and would discover this new dungeon over here, and then I would talk to Claudia's dad and she would make cookies, and Lento would get a bit stronger with his swordplay, and Tao would learn a little bit more about deciphering this ancient book in a language he doesn't really understand. And on the surface of it, I was confused. This is exactly what I was talking about in that previous video. This sort of thing that I can't be bothered to do as soon as I discover that I'm going through a bunch of someone else's to-do list. It's like getting emails at work. I'm just going through the to-do list that someone has set for me, and I'm doing them. But strangely enough, I would do those tasks, and then literally later on that day, I would feel the urge to turn my Apple TV back on, log into Steam, and load up the game and play a little bit more. And then I would pick up another few items, and I would discover that I need, I don't know, carbonite ore or amatite ore, or whatever it's called. And I was like, I can't remember where you find that. I feel like I've been to every zone, but maybe it's under that rock next to that place near the beach, and it does say that it needs sand as well. It was a game that I discovered was fun to ponder about and fun to think about, but I still couldn't figure out the main thing. Why was I fine with turning on the TV, logging into Steam so that I could play this game, when I couldn't be bothered to turn on my PlayStation, which is arguably easier to set up and play because the PlayStation, it's already hooked up to the TV. Steam, I actually have to turn on a separate computer, make sure that I'm logged in, then go over to the TV and then log into the app and then make sure my controller is synchronized and then go in and play there. And while playing Atelier Ryza, I realized it's because of the scale. The Atelier series is very similar to like a storybook compared to a Shakespearean tragedy. You know, sometimes you're just not in the mood for a Shakespearean tragedy. Sometimes you just want to hear the story of the boy who grew up in the fairy forest and he discovered the Master Sword and he took down Ganon. And actually, sometimes you don't even want to go that far. Sometimes you just want to play the game where the girl throws a newt in a pot and mixes it with some sugar and, I don't know, magic berries, and then turns it into, I don't know, a leather jacket or something. And then she's super excited because then she can share it with her master, who's also an alchemist, who happens to know something about her her mother who disappeared years ago and hasn't come back. It's a much smaller scale adventure. And I was like, wait, is it because I just can't handle epic stories? Maybe I just don't like epic stories, but that can't be true because I was really into FF7 when I was a kid. I really enjoyed the whole fact that they're on this like anti-terrorist organization. They're trying to take down Shinra. And no one really understands who is running Shinra and who is Sephiroth and all these people in black capes, and there are monsters appearing everywhere. And now we've got materia, and what is the life stream? And I realized that it all just comes down to the fact that Atelier Ryza has magically hit the balance point, which is perfect for me and my lifestyle. Ryza doesn't try to rule my life and tell me when I have to play it. Unlike almost every other game that I've been playing, every other game has some weird agenda. For example, Street Fighter has a ranking system. You go on, and when Street Fighter came out in 2016, there was nothing to do except go online. There was no arcade mode, there was no story mode, there was like no versus mode. I think, was there a survival mode? I don't know if survival mode came later, but essentially it was an esports tool. You were supposed to go online and measure your size against all the other dudes online and see who was the biggest. I mean, the best ranked Street Fighter player. But then the same thing happens with Animal Crossing. To an extent, I really enjoy how Animal Crossing is like, okay, there are no monsters that you're supposed to kill, and there's no evil overlord who is oppressing everyone in the land, and you don't need to lead a revolution or anything. You're a person who shows up in a town by accident. You're the mayor, and you build bridges so that animals can cross from one island to another. Brilliant. That's the whole game, except it's not, because on the 3DS, after you had built those bridges and built those tents and stuff, then the flowers grow, and you're like, yay, I have a flower in my village, but then the flower wilts and dies, and then you don't show up for a couple days, and people get upset, and they say that you haven't been around, and then they guilt trip you for not talking to them more often, and you missed their birthday party, and hey, we agreed to arrive at 5 p.m. at my house to talk about this thing, but where were you? You didn't show up. Animal Crossing wants you, or it used to want you, to log in all the time. I would say that on the Nintendo Switch, a lot of that has changed. If you don't show up on the Switch for a while, they're like, hey, where you been? Haven't seen you around for a while. But your flowers don't die, and the whole town doesn't go to pot. It's all generally okay. But Ryza really doesn't feel like that at all, and I feel like there are very few games like Ryza out there right now. I wouldn't say that Ryza is a 100% success. I think the story, in some ways, it wasn't handled in a way like that. How do I explain it? It wasn't handled in a way that made sense, because Ryza kind of wants to be independent, but at the same time, she doesn't really want to leave home because she loves home. And in that regard, she's so real. She's so real. She's just like a real girl next door that you know. She really wants to go out into the world, but she really doesn't want to leave town, and she's conflicted. And in the way, she ends up kind of indecisive, and she just ends up like a friend that you've probably got nearby. It's one of these people who is always talking about going off and doing great things, but we all know that they're not actually going to go and do them, because if they did leave home, they'd be miserable. And somehow this game has become like a perfect descriptor for the way that the kind of gamer that I am, who I am as a gamer. I don't know if the word is lifestyle gamer, but I feel like I guess I'm going to just invent that term if it doesn't already exist. I feel like I'm a lifestyle gamer. I can only play games that fit into my lifestyle. For example, I can play fighting games, but I can't do the esports thing. I can't do the grind. I can't remember to actually play the game every single day for an hour. I can't do proper controlled practice where I learn my anti-airs and I learn my punishes and I do the frame data and I actually practice situations that I've been in that didn't work very well and I need to figure out how to get out of those situations. And I can't really play the Final Fantasy VII Remake because I know that every single time I go into it, it's going to be this epic thing where I'm going to meet Tifa, or I'm going to meet Eris, or I'm going to have a fight with Barrett, or I'm going to have a boss fight with one of the Turks, so I need to figure out a strategy for how I'm going to set up my materia and my weapons, and this is going to be kind of epic, and this is going to take a while. It's epic, and I don't have time for it in my life, or rather I'm finding it difficult to play the games that want to eat up a certain amount of time in my life, and I'm either just too busy or I'm just too stubborn. I'm like, no, you don't get to control what I do with my time. I'm going to play a game and you're just going to let me play you for a little while and then going to switch you off when I feel like it. That's what Atelier Ryza lets me do. I can show up in the game, pick a few berries, push the story a little bit further, maybe learn a new recipe, click save, and I'm done. And then maybe I'll show up again later. But I feel like I'm not missing anything super epic. I don't feel a huge amount of pressure to play for another 30 minutes so I can get through this next big story point. Because there are no big story points. It's like Lento got better with his sword, or Tao learned a new thing from his dictionary. Claudia learned the flute and got over a bit of her embarrassment of performing music in front of a live audience or something. They're all small daily accomplishments that are incredibly realistic. And it reflects kind of how real life is, especially for me. It's like small little accomplishments like, oh, I managed to wake up a little bit earlier, or I managed to go to sleep on time, or I managed to prevent myself from watching too much YouTube, or read a few more books, or study a bit more Japanese, or actually draw a little bit on pencil and paper every single day. And for me, these are small little achievements that I really, really enjoy. But it's not like when I sit down to draw, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to finish a 20-page manga. And then the next time I sit down to draw, it's like, okay, I'm drawing a character, but now it's a story, and now it's a 4-panel comic strip, and I'm going to post it on Instagram, and I'm going to also share it on Pixiv, and I'm also going to share it on Twitter, and then I'm going to make a video about it. It's like, why does every small accomplishment have to turn into this epic, sprawling, giant task? Why can't we just be satisfied with small little things like, hey, I put a log and a mushroom in a pot and I magically got this exploding grape. Wow, wonderful. Atelier, I'm an alchemist. All this in addition to the fact that Atelier Ryza is also, for all the reasons I mentioned last year when I played the game first, it's just a very relaxing experience. The music is there's no pressure to the music. There's a lot of pizzicato strings all plucking away like plunk, plink, plink, blink, blink, blink. Hey, I'm running through the forest and I'm collecting the thing, and oh, I have to chop that down. Gotta switch to the axe. Chop that thing down. Hey, some monsters, don't worry, we're not gonna die. We slash them down, and then we go home and we heal, and we come back with more items, and this time we're stronger because we've got the bombs now. Atelier Ryza taught me that there's a reason why I also don't play mobile games. I just don't like the idea of games that give you login bonuses. I just can't stand these games that pressure me to show up every day, because I don't want to show up every day. I want to play you when I feel like playing you. But mobile games aren't one-off pick up and play games like Tetris. I love picking up and playing Tetris. And actually recently, I've been playing Tetris Effect on my Oculus Quest in virtual reality, and that's been great fun because that's another game that just doesn't pressure me to go back and play it. It doesn't want to control me, but I understand that business-wise, it makes sense. If you're going to make a game, try and put in something that gives the player a daily login bonus. Try and give them missions and tasks so that there's something that they can do every single day. They can earn fight money and they can collect costumes and get new characters. A lot of gamers have been begging for this stuff. They just want more stuff to do because they're idle. They want to play games. That's fine. I'm not idle. I have a job, I have stuff to do, I have errands to run, people to contact, and emails to send. Mobile games are basically farms, and you're a farmer. If you can't accept that, I mean, of course, not all mobile games, but a large number of the mobile games that are out in Japan, the main kind of mobile game that's popular in Japan is you're a farmer. Sometimes you're farming vegetables, but most of the time you're farming, I don't know, battleships, or you're farming warriors, or you're farming pop musicians, or whatever it is you're doing. Essentially, all of them are vegetables. And if you don't show up every single day and grind them to higher levels, then you can't get to the next bit. If you don't show up every day and spend a little money, then you're not going to actually get past the wall, which is built into most mobile games. Otherwise, they would never be profitable if there was no wall. But you've got to show up and you've got to pour water on the plants, which in terms of mobile phone RPGs is tapping the quest button, and in most cases there's just an auto button, so you just have to have it open. The game wants you to have the game open at least once a day, because if you have an app open at least once a day, then you can be shown an ad at least once a day, and if an ad can be shown to you at least once a day, then that company can make a little money. I don't want to be a farmer, and I'm not always in the mood for Shakespeare, and that's why I've discovered that's the kind of gamer I am. I'm a pick up and play gamer. I like Street Fighter. I like fighting EX Layer, I like fighting them's fighting herds, like Capcom versus SNK. I love Tekken, Soul Calibur, Dragon Ball. All of these fighting games, I love them, but I just cannot get on board with the whole we need to spend time grinding and getting better, because I'm stubborn. That's all it really comes down to. I can't bear any game that tries to control how often I play it. Now, what I said about esports and grinding to get better, I do actually want to get better at fighting games, and I've had a long discussion and made many videos talking about it. I do like the feel of making actual progress in something that, again, like I was saying at the beginning of this video, something that is working on my motor skills, but also helping me develop ideas about the mind games that are going on in a player versus player match. That does interest me, but classically, I don't play fighting games every day. Usually, I'll show up on stream and I'll play some fighting games for the duration of the stream, but then, I don't know, I might play off stream maybe once or twice for the rest of that week. But I'm not in the habit of practicing it every day, and I'm certainly not going to practice it and try to rank up just because the game is making me feel guilty for being a low rank in this game. But really, what I'm trying to say is that Atelier Ryza has been a very interesting game, and I think we still haven't fully explored all the best parts of it. I think trying to push the Atelier series away from being hardcore alchemy into more linear style Final Fantasy RPG has been really interesting and has created a new kind of Atelier game that works really well for people like me. People who want games that fit in with our lifestyles. I want to turn on my phone and play a game because I'm at the bus stop, not because I like to play games on my phone every time I'm idle, but because sometimes I don't like talking to people at the bus stop, and I would rather just ignore them and not have to make conversation and play something on my phone. I don't need daily login bonuses. I don't need all of these challenges telling me that I need to practice more fighting games and play it every single day and try and grind more and rank up. And I don't need these epic RPGs that are sending me off to take over the universe or to protect some foreign land from oppressing all of the villages. I really hope I see more games coming out like Atelier Ryza that don't force the player to feel pressure to keep playing the game. I understand that that's important, but there are a lot of games, a lot of arcade games that were really successful that weren't desperate to make you play all the time. You know, Pac-Man was fun, Super Mario was fun, Gradius was fun, but I played it, and when I would show up at the arcade, sometimes I would play it again, but I wasn't like desperate to like go to the arcade every single day so I could play these games. I'm just really resistive to anything that is trying to cause an addiction in me, because I recognize it. I'm just like, no, you're not the boss of me, I'm the boss of me, go away. Having a really strange relationship with video games. But now I want to know what kind of gamer you are. Are you like me, where you see a big epic RPG, and because you know that every time you turn it on, there's going to be like an hour to an hour and a half of epic stuff that happens, and you know that you don't really have an hour to an hour and a half, or you don't want to spend the next hour to an hour and a half playing something epic, you end up going for something pick up and play, something more like Ryza, or even like Animal Crossing. That's a dangerous one though, because you could end up playing Animal Crossing for an hour and a half as well, but that's another story. Or are you the type of person that likes to play mobile games? You get a kick out of being asked to go log back into the game every single day. You feel a lot of satisfaction from grinding and farming these battleships and these vegetables in these mobile games every day. Or do you get really excited knowing that when you get home from either work or school or whatever it is you do, that there's like an hour and a half and you're going to have a meaty RPG experience, and you're going to sit there and you're going to be really absorbed in the game? I would love to know what kind of person you are, because I do recognize that not all games should be like Ryza, and that's absolutely not what I'm trying to say. I've just discovered through this game, Ryza, which is a bit of a departure from the usual Atelier series. I just found that whatever it is they were aiming for and going for, whatever it created was a very happy medium, a really nice balance type of game that suits me, because I'm the type of person that now has to work, but also has to maintain other aspects of my life, and then also come home and do YouTube stuff and Twitch stuff. And games have to fit around and in between those zones. I'm just really curious to see how many other people are in that position, and whether the demand for these more pick up and play experiences, or games that are a little more respectful of our time, maybe there's a higher demand for that than game publishers realize. Anyway, so that's all for now. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and if you haven't already, try clicking that notification bell, because I think it does remind people that videos are coming out. I do know that a number of people say that they're subscribed, but then the videos don't show up in their home feed. So if you click the bell, I think it's more likely that YouTube will actually remind you that a new video from this channel has gone up. And if you want to watch some live streams, or come and chat on Discord, or talk to me on Twitter, then all the links are in the description below. I'll see you all in the next NihongoGamer video.